Freedom of speech.
Presented by Still a Frog.
"This guy," said the now standing best man, ceremoniously beginning his brotherly rite of passage. "Even back when we were little, this guy used to think of himself as God's gift to, well, everything. I mean, the amount of time he spent in front of the mirror. My dad always said, 'Which one of you's the girl, you or your sister? Which one gets the skirt?' He was bombing. Actually, bombing was far too mild a word for what was happening. This was beyond cringeworthy. And now he has Caitlin," he continued, utterly oblivious. "Oh no, don't insult the bride. Please don't insult the bride." Desperately, I prayed. "Caitlin is everything he deserves and more. More of a scandalous past, more makeup than a contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race, and more baggage than all of the Kardashians combined. Am I right?" I couldn't watch, and yet, like that rubbernecker wreck on the interstate that has tragedy written all over it, I also couldn't not watch. It was mesmerizing, a complete descent into humiliation. I kind of had to hand it to the guy. I ordered another whiskey neat. The bartender made some wry comment along the lines of, "Someone needs to kill that guy's mic. I've seen a lot of them and just, wow." When you embarrass the drink slinger, a normally gregarious figure now rendered speechless, you knew you were in trouble. Granted, I wasn't acquainted with the poor bastard, but my heart certainly went out to him, standing up there doing this to himself. He was either drunk, stupid, a combination of both, or just so clueless that he thought this was an acceptable homage to the bride and groom. It was truly a fascinating display of a complete crash and burn. Not that I cared. My official capacity was that of representative of the bride's mother's cousin's family. My mom was the MOB's first cousin, but they didn't really get along. In fact, according to Mom, it was a spite invite, and so rather than just turn the thing down, she sent me in her stead. Moving queen to king's rook 5, my mom was essentially saying, "I see your spite invite and raise you my daughter's token appearance rather than deign to grace your event with my own presence." And yes, I realize that I am mixing game metaphors here, but you get the point. All I wanted to do was cozy up to the bar, and that was basically it. Once I'd stayed long enough, according to Mom's master plan, I could then safely Uber my ass home. And all was going well, quite nicely, I might add, until he commandeered the stool next to mine. I glanced over quickly to see if there was sweat dripping down his face, see if his cheeks were inflamed, the telltale signs of someone who knows he's just given a disastrous performance. But nothing. Cool as a cucumber. Amazingly, he even seemed pleased with himself. So much so that he asked, "Like the speech?" And yep, there it was, the raison d'entrée for the Titanic debacle. That slur, that hint of unsteadiness, that which practically screamed, "I am drunk." What does one say? Yeah, sure, entertaining," I half smiled. "Buy you a drink?" he sloppily grinned, eliciting an eye roll from the bartender, who I imagined had heard that far from clever, "Duh, this is an open bar" line about 12,000 times. I lifted my whiskey to show him I was good for the moment, or rather to say, "Look, dumbass, I already have one." "Seriously, though," he persisted in addressing me after ordering his own gin and tonic, "what did you really think of the speech?" I hurriedly downed the rest of my whiskey in an effort to A, hasten the effects of my own intoxication in what was now turning out to be an increasingly uncomfortable evening, and B, have something to say so that I could avoid the question. "I will take that drink," I cheerily piped up. The thing about this particular tactic, however, is that eventually the Bacchanalian gods will win out. Attempted evasion by rapid inebriation nearly always leads to revelation, and that's what happened to me. So I just sort of unburdened myself to this guy, and you know what? He was interesting. Not just that, shockingly, he was also funny. Downright hilarious. Take that, though, with a grain of salt, since I was 6 whiskeys in with only a couple of bacon-wrapped scallops and some stale peanuts in my stomach. "Why didn't this come out in your speech?" I managed with just the slightest hint of slur myself. "What?" This sense of humor, I replied, and then, without thinking, or rather thinking in that spill your guts kind of way to which the intoxicated are inclined, I observed, that speech, if that's what you call it, was boring. Not even boring. Bad. I'm talking train wreck bad. Quit while you're ahead was not a saying to which my liquor-soaked brain subscribed. It was, he mumbled. Yes, I said, super loud. But you are really a funny guy, I snort-laughed. I am a funny guy, he concurred with a glazed-over look. Thank you for saying that, he smiled. And then he added, would you like to go see my room? Now, in this moment, better sense should have prevailed. I should have kindly declined, maybe laughed it off with some witty version of, don't all hotel rooms look the same, and then apped my Uber to come and take me home, clothing and dignity still somewhat intact. But this is a wedding. Ladies, we all know how weddings make us feel. Call it overly affectionate with a dash of horny thrown in for good measure. Even the staunchest of feminists will agree that there's just something about being around this maudlin display of happily ever after, though this particular couple I only gave about 5 years with good behavior. Still, you can't help but melt. Your knees weaken during the cake sharing, the first dance, the introduction of Mr. and Mrs. Your heart surrenders to every cliche you've ever heard about love and forever, and other parts of you are more apt to succumb, shall we say. So there, in its own roundabout way, is my justification for why I found myself in bed with the guy. The sex, however, was great, despite the fact that we were both about an 8 on the wobbly scale. He was a fantastic kisser, and I had a good time. Even after, when we lay there on a very stiff, unyielding mattress, both somewhat sobered, we talked while touching hands, our fingers intertwined. It was almost sweet. Until... Was my speech really that bad? He said softly. Damn, I'd nearly forgotten my overly enthusiastic denunciation of his toast. Yeah, it was, and I know that because of how funny and thoughtful you've been with me, I offered. I hate my new sister-in-law, he then confessed out of the blue. I had a few drinks beforehand, in case you couldn't tell. Well, duh, though I refrained from stating the sarcastic obvious. I guess my heart wasn't in it. She's just such a bitch. She thinks she's so much better than my family, and she's got my brother on about a 2-foot leash. Look, I explained, you're obviously not going to change your brother's mind. He loves her. You may not, but you're not the one marrying her. And so all you did was embarrass him and yourself with a terrible speech that, thanks to the internet, will probably live on in infamy. A bit too honest, perhaps, but I was lying completely naked on a scratchy hotel top sheet, already feeling the cotton mouth of a monster hangover, listening to a virtual stranger lament the newest addition to his family, so what the hell? I had one written, he admitted, one that was really good. I just got to drinking and couldn't find it. You mean this? I handed him a folded up, well-perspired on, torn-out sheet of notebook paper. Yes! Where was it? Right here, next to the alarm clock, I smirked. What do you think? He asked. You want me to read it? Yes, I do, he replied quietly, and so I did. This was the speech you should have given, I said. This is the one your brother would have loved, would have remembered as a highlight of his wedding. And I meant it. You know what? You're right. I'm going to fix this, he blurted out. Fix it? How? But I knew what he meant, and there was no way I was going to miss it. Ladies and gentlemen, by the time I reached the banquet hall, he was standing on a chair, clinking a wine glass with a butter knife. May I have your attention, please? He anxiously cleared his throat and then began. I would like a do-over. I was under the influence earlier, and I didn't say what I really wanted to. On this, your wedding day, he turned toward the newly nuptialed pair, I'd like to tell you about my hopes for your marriage. So if you'll just indulge me for a couple of minutes longer. He then spotted me and winked. The speech was sentimental. It was funny as hell. He had those in attendance laughing and crying within the span of 5 minutes. Now this was a best man's toast. What did you think? He strolled, or rather cutely swaggered over to me as soon as he finished. Major improvement, I said with a smile. You even had me a little teary-eyed. How are you getting home? He asked. Who says I'm going home? I flirted. Oh, really? He mused. Well, it is a night of do-overs. What do you say? We'll get to the do-over part, I sheepishly grinned. How about we talk first? I'll buy you a drink. Make it a Coke and you've got a deal, he smiled broadly. Deal, I agreed. He reached for my hand, and we walked back over to the bar.
Ribbit.
Want to hear more about fall-down laughing first date disasters, hilarious online dating nightmares, and even that rare, magical meeting that turns into a romance for the ages? Download our free app, A New True Story Every Day, the ever-entertaining comedy of the attraction between men and women.